Pod Boys, upgrade, upgrade, upgrade.
Wow.
Beep, boop, beep, 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 beep. We're the upgraded Pod Boys. Hello and welcome to the fully upgraded and cool futuristic pod people. I'm back, the STEM dad, Matisse Van Rossum.
And I'm here, the Ben.
The Ben!
Jeez, we just turned into radio hosts, I think.
And we can't forget about Cleveland Mosier.
Wow. Hello, everybody. How's it going?
I feel like we actually kind of downgraded there into like Saturday morning zoo radio. That's not really an upgrade at all.
This is Fleet Florp and the Beef. The worst.
Yeah.
Literally the worst.
But the Pod Boys are back. I'm back. Did you miss me last week?
I missed you, Tease.
I missed me too. But this week we're talking Upgrade. It's a movie. It's a pretty fucking cool movie.
Yeah.
Oh, it certainly
Robots and cyberpunk and all that stuff.
But before we get into that movie, I do think there was something we were talking about last week in regards to Tease when he came back, but something about a safe word, but I can't remember what it was. Do you remember the safe bet? Do you remember the word? Because I don't.
I definitely don't remember the safe word.
All right, cool. All right, well, then we're safe, I guess.
That's what you think. You think I didn't bug this entire place to hear what you were saying about me while I was gone?
Did you have to bug it? We were talking into mics and recording all of it.
Not live, you idiot.
Oh, so you were like running a different mic up through your own cybernetic mainframe.
Absolutely.
Oh, okay.
Because I'm an upgraded human now.
Oh, damn. Well, he got us. He got us. It's too late.
Maybe he was using an analog recorder, so we couldn't trace it.
Yeah, transmitting to my extremely digital anal mic
Wait,
implant.
isn't an analog recorder just a flute?
Analog.
Analog? Isn't that just an iPod Nano shoved up your butt?
Shit, you're on to me.
Well, we watched Upgrade.
We sure
Yeah.
did.
It was quite the movie. So this movie came out this year, directed by Leigh Whannell.
Written and directed by Leigh Whannell. I think it's Leigh Whannell. I don't know.
Whannell. Whannell.
Somebody we've talked about on the show before.
Indeed.
Who has been a longtime collaborator with James Wan, wrote and starred in the original Saw, wrote I think all the Insidious movies.
I think he's in them as well.
Yeah, he has bit parts in all of them. He's one of the paranormal investigator guys. Mixed bag of a person.
Yeah,
That was a weird way to say that. But
I mean, like a human bag. It's problematic.
it's very hit or miss his stuff. You know, like Saw is a legitimately fantastic movie.
yeah,
Agreed.
the original Saw is good.
Yeah, and
As we talked about on I think that was my first guest
Yeah,
appearance
it
on
was.
the program.
On our 4th episode of the show.
Damn.
but then right after it, he did that movie Dead Silence. I don't know if you remember that one.
Oh,
with the ventriloquist.
Oh no,
dummy.
I remember that one. Did
Yeah.
Leigh Whannell write that one? I know James Wan directed that one.
He wrote that one.
Yeah, no, that sounds right. That's a shitty fucking movie.
Yeah, but yeah, this movie must have been his passion project. Or
That's what
pet
I'm
project.
thinking too. Because, like, I went into this with relatively low expectations outside of I was hoping for, like, some schlocky action fun.
Yeah.
Which is there, but I was also really surprised how, like, legitimately quite well executed this movie was.
Yeah, same. Loved it.
Yeah, no, I think it's extremely well shot and a little more thought out than a lot of his other movies.
Absolutely.
you know?
Well, especially in, like,
The plot's pretty well contained. It doesn't have that problem that a lot of
it's a
sci-fi
really-
movies has with like the ADD, you know.
well, it's a really simple plot, which is something we've talked about on the show before as being generally a hallmark of good filmmaking, is keeping your plot relatively simple. But what surprised me is how, like, kind of smart a lot of the world building in this was, because it is like a sci-fi movie. It takes place like way more into the future than I thought it would, but it feels like a real lived-in world.
Yeah, well, it's
That's
funny
not unbelievable.
because it's set in somewhat of the near future.
Yeah.
But only like 2 or 3 characters have futuristic cars, and they all look like Batman cars.
Some of the futuristic cars are really dumb looking, I will say. That was something that got me early, is the future cars kind of look like shit.
Yeah.
And I think that was somewhat intentional. Like, they're supposed to be juxtaposed to his Spitfucker or whatever the name of his car
This
is.
Firebird, yeah. Well, I think
prefer Spitfucker. I think. I mean, if I was gonna own a car, I think Spitfucker.
I do think also that something that reveals itself about this world as the movie goes on is that, like, the really fancy technology stuff is absolutely reserved for, like, the wealthy, the elite.
Yeah.
Like, the slummier parts of town that we see are not particularly high tech.
They're anti-tech.
In a lot of ways. So it sort of makes sense that there's like a divide between like the more recognizable technology and then this like super weird future space stuff that like only rich people have. I think that's, you know, it's
yeah,
kinda cool.
and it's done subtly. It's not like it's not going full Elysium or anything.
well, right.
You know,
Very true. It's not a political film at all.
No, it's just an aspect that's integrated into the world building.
Right, exactly. Like I said, very, very simple plot. Guy gets paralyzed in a mugging where his wife is killed by some weird military guys. Gets an opportunity to be able to walk again with a hyper intelligent
We can rebuild
AI
you.
chip. Yeah, $1 Million Man kind of deal.
Better, faster, stronger.
Yeah, and then uses his newfound superpowers to seek revenge on the people who killed his wife. So in that sense, very generic revenge flick. Kind of reminds me of Crank in a lot of ways.
it definitely in style.
Less energetic than Crank, but in the style, absolutely. And the same kind of structure of the plot, just like moving from place to place, fucking people up on your way, you know? Which is something that I appreciated.
Yeah, well, we recently started playing Pathfinder, and we have a little campaign. And I have to say, it reminds me of like a chaotic neutral Pathfinder campaign. Just
A
in
little
that,
bit, yeah.
you know, it's a lot of crazy shit happening and having to deal with it somehow.
Yeah, well, I think it's you have a chaotic neutral character interacting with the upgrade, which is a chaotic evil character, you know, or in some cases lawful evil, and that I think is like the key part to this film is it is either neutral or evil, and there's very little good to be interacted with. I mean, there's a detective character, but apart from that, yeah, like it's very satisfying. You know, like that's I think where like a lot of the comedy came from.
Well, like one of my favorite things is that when he gets this AI chip from this young eccentric tech billionaire genius kid, he has to sign a non-disclosure agreement because technically these trials are, you know, they're not legal, they're not FDA approved. So he can walk again, but anytime he leaves his house, he has to pretend to be a quadriplegic. So anytime he like goes out and investigates, he's just like in his wheelchair, which I think is really funny, and it sets up for one of the best scenes in the movie when he goes to like the biker bar or whatever, and he just rolls in there in his wheelchair and just like, excuse me, and just like addresses the whole crowd. Is like, I heard that one of you might know about who killed my wife, so if you were there that night, please step forward. Just like addressing this whole bar full of hard asses.
Yeah, and later, after he's done with everything, he rolls out on his chair and then leaves it right outside of the place. And some guy sitting in a wheelchair, and the main character is like, watch this for me.
Locks his wheelchair and leaves.
Yeah, and then the guy in the wheelchair is just like, "Oh, you faker!" And then that dude gets up and gets in the
other guy's wheelchair. Yeah.
But no, there were a lot of really good bits with that faking the quadriplegic stuff.
Well, especially because like he like murders the shit out of these people in the bathroom at the biker bar after they try to torture him, and then he just rolls back out of the bathroom in his wheelchair, and everyone's just like, what the fuck? And they go in and they see like all these people dead and shit, and he just like rolls out. That shit is so fucking funny.
Yeah, it's like quadriplegic by day, human Cuisinart by night.
Exactly.
This movie has such a dark sense of humor.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the best elements of it.
Yeah, it's everything I wanted the new Venom film to be. Like, it's what I was hoping for, like, just to get the legitimately dark moments in there with the comedy. Like,
well, I haven't seen the new Venom personally, but I have heard that there are a lot of similarities between these two. Did you see the new Venom?
No, I didn't. I have not yet. But I'm a little. I'm really worried. I'm really worried about seeing it. The PG-13 rating on it kind of turned me off to the whole thing. But I don't know. I'm still going to see it at some point. But
yeah, can't say I give much of a shit either way.
Yeah.
But the guy in this movie does look just like Tom Hardy.
Yeah,
which is distracting because you keep thinking that it's Tom Hardy, and you have to remind yourself that it's not Tom Hardy.
It didn't appear to be like a discount Tom Hardy to me. I felt like he did a.
Well, no, I think he's a fine actor, and he does a good job. He just happens to look just like Tom Hardy.
He did a great job, though. I've heard that the new Venom is almost an exact copy of like the plot of this movie. To the point where I think there's a lawsuit going on about it.
I have heard that too.
But I think this movie succeeds in a lot of ways that I can't imagine Venom succeeding in.
And not even just imagining it, but have heard that it does not.
Yeah, well, having discount Tom Hardy and Tom Hardy, in similar movies does not help.
No.
Right, exactly.
And generally, I'm a huge Tom Hardy fan, too. Like, I'd love to bat for the Venom movie, but I don't see that happening.
Well, Sony has a real bad track record with their superhero movies, so...
I'd love to see an R-rated Venom, or an unrated cut.
Well, that's
I'm
what
sure
I was hoping this was going to be.
Well, that's what it was shot as, and then they cut out a bunch of scenes in post to make it PG-13.
Yeah, so maybe we'll get an unrated version eventually, but tangent.
Yeah, we're talking about Upgrade.
It has such a wry, dark sense of humor. And it's really funny. Like, the dialogue he has with Stem is really pretty clever for the most part.
Well, yeah, they do all the natural, like, Stem's an AI. It's very dry. It doesn't have a sense of humor, but the comedy comes from the timing of the things it says at inappropriate moments, shit like that. All stuff that's been done before, but like it's written well enough that it still is funny and it doesn't feel overly cliched, which is something that I appreciated a lot.
And the pacing is quick enough too that like if anything does fall through, you're already on to the next thing, and like. So it consistently steps up to the bat and swings.
Oh yeah, definitely. It is pretty quickly paced. Not as action heavy as I was expecting, but the few times where it does get really actiony are just excellent. Probably the best shot sequences of the movie. That's when the like really unique camera style sort of kicks in. Like you have a lot of the camera like staying straight on with his body while he's fighting, so like the world around him is shifting, which is a really, really fucking cool effect. Also considering how I'm sure it feels to him because he's not actually in control of his body during those fight scenes. It's Stem taking over, so he's sort of just like on a roller coaster, just like the audience. I think they do a really good job of conveying that to the audience visually.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I thought all of that stuff was incredibly done. Yeah. I can only imagine, like, the elaborate robot arm they had tracking him
Yeah.
through all those shots.
Mm-hmm.
Just insanity.
Yeah.
I would love to see what that rig looked like.
Yeah, well, sometimes it was moving while those
Right,
shots were
right.
happening too, and it's just like it's so hard to grasp how they did that. You know?
All I know is I hope this film isn't the only foray into that camera style. I hope we see more of that in other films in the future, because I think there's a lot of potential with that shooting style.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
I
wanna see
mean,
more.
it's not like this is the first film to have done that kind of stuff, but you don't see it that often. I think mostly because
It's probably hella expensive.
well, yeah, and it takes a lot of precision to do stuff like that, which is why you usually only see it utilized in like small moments, but like they are using that kind of shit throughout entire fight scenes in this movie.
It can be jarring, is the thing, and I think
Right.
it works well because it fits with the robotic, control
Right,
element of this
exactly.
movie. But I think it would be tougher to do it for extended lengths in other movies.
For sure.
When
and-
you do get it stuff like that in other movies, you get it in movies like Requiem for a Dream,
right.
or Angst.
Usually things where there's some sort of like warped perception, usually brought on by drugs or just being crazy. But yeah, I think you're right. For this film, it works so well because of that like robotic control. Like I was saying, the main character is just along for the ride. He's not in control. So the fight scenes feel really fluid and they feel like a roller coaster, but also like kind of hard to follow, like the subtleties of the movements, which I think is intentional, because it's like he's not in control of what he's doing. So why should we feel like he's in control? It has to feel like a roller coaster or something like that.
Yeah.
So big fan of that. Like good decision making on Lee Wannell's part to make those robot fight scenes feel more artificial than something like the Terminator.
It definitely feels more visceral, like you're there and participating.
Exactly.
Almost.
Yeah.
I really like the set design as well.
Me too.
The style of this movie in general was just spot on. For example, the kind of warehouse when he's starting to lose his motor functions.
Oh yeah, when he has to go to the hacker.
Yeah, when he goes to the hacker's den, that whole area is really...
Yeah, like the glowing like casings on the floor, and
Yeah.
It looked very good.
I like the juxtaposition of some of the futuristic stuff with the more regular stuff too. Like the billionaire guy's house. Like it's not even a house. Like you just drive up to it. It's just like this big stone arch, and you walk down these stairs underground.
Yeah.
And it's all like futuristic and
My subterranean facility.
and when we first see him, he's like playing with a cloud. It's like, what is that thing you're touching? He's like, it's my cloud. Like, and then you have scenes where like he goes into the first guy's house that he tracks from like the tattoo on his wrist, and he goes into that dude's house, and it's just like a normal house.
Yeah.
The juxtaposition between that stuff
for the first robot fight
is
sequence.
really nice. I do think it's interesting how like all of the really futuristic seeming locations just don't have windows. Like in the future, does nobody want to have like natural light? Like everything is just a bunker. I feel like that's such like a sci-fi trope, like fuck windows. I don't understand it.
Because for every window, you have to have a green screen behind it, and you have to like simulate the city behind. Like,
Not even. You can just have light shining in from outside those windows. That's how they did it in Blade Runner, and that's how they've
true.
done it
they
in
did
a
that in
lot of
Warehouse.
other things.
Yeah, they did
Yeah,
a warehouse
you-
sequence, so you get it in the movie. Like you get that in the bar.
Well, no,
as
it's
well,
obviously
and-
it's obviously stylistic decisions. I'm just wondering why it's such a sci-fi thing that people just don't want to have windows in their houses.
future shit.
Future shit, I don't have a problem with it in the movie. It's just me speculating on why people don't like windows. That's confusing.
No,
to me.
I can track that, and I agree with it.
Oh, one thing I want to talk about in terms of pacing, going back to that for a second. What'd you guys think of the first, 20 minutes? It's a
I didn't have a
slow
problem with it.
start to say the least.
It took a little while to sell me on it, honestly.
To the point
Yeah, we were all
where
pretty
you
critical
guys
of it at
weren't
that point.
sure whether it was a horror movie. I know, Cleveland, you were like, I don't know if this is a horror movie.
I still don't know if it's a horror movie.
I think it does become a horror movie later. I think it takes a while. My problem with the beginning is not so much not setting it up as a horror film, but just that I think that the way that they ease you into this futuristic world is a little bit clumsy, and the way they sort of ease you into the characters. Like, I did not like the main character very much in the first 20 or so minutes. I found him obnoxious, and his wife. So I was not really sold on any of that. It really started to pick up for me once he got paralyzed and was in the hospital, and then like got the stem transplant and everything. Then it totally sold me, and I got to know him better as a character, and I started to enjoy him more.
So you're saying like you started to relate with him once he was dead inside.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair. I hear you. I hear that.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't all too bothered with the opening stuff. It starts kind of slow, but I think it kind of works in its favor because the escalation is unexpected. More unexpected because of it.
I mean, I don't think my problem with it comes from slow pacing. I don't even think it starts particularly slow. I just think it starts clumsily. I do think the escalation is good, but it's like starting a 500-meter dash where you kind of trip right out of the gate, and then you refine your footing and gain your momentum and finish strong. Like, that's what I think this movie does. I don't really fault it, but I will say that it took me about 20 minutes before I started to enjoy the movie.
Could I get some key examples of trips?
I think how heavy-handedly they set up the husband and wife's relationship. Like, oh, he's old school. He rebuilds cars with his hands. He's not real into the whole futuristic thing. He doesn't like technology. But she works for one of the biggest computer companies on the planet, and she's an important businesswoman, and she teases him because he doesn't like technology. But, oh, now he's paralyzed, and now he has to rely on technology. That shit I thought was all too heavy-handed, and it just bothered me.
Yeah.
And especially, like, having them go to the billionaire's house because he just fixed up a vintage car for him. And she's like, oh, you're so-and-so. You're the owner of one of our rival companies. I hope our company can be just like yours someday.
Yeah. You know what it is? It's that you get the world in periphery during those open sequences, or during the opening sequences, and I was thinking like, oh man, I know that right outside those doors is Blade Runner. I know that like the cool sci-fi world is right there, and I'm having to like listen to these normal fuckers talk for a little bit.
It is a little exposition dumpy.
Yeah.
But
I think it's just that those characters were very normal, and we were kind of expecting like something like
it does set up a lot for the rest of the movie. It is a little heavy-handed and dumpy, like I said.
I agree. It sets stuff up that has payoff. I'm not saying that the payoff is done badly, but I do think the setup is a little bit clumsy, and could have been done a little bit in a way that I think would have immersed you into the story a little easier.
Yeah, I don't think it trips. I think it shuffles.
It's not a full trip. Like, it stumbles a little bit. Like, it has those first couple of steps where its footing is not right on. I think.
But then after that, it breaks out into full blown dance, like super well choreographed.
Well, that's just a totally different analogy then. But no, ultimately, like, I think all the payoff works really fucking well, and I do start to enjoy the character, the main character, more once we get to spend a little bit more time with him. And also, he has like development as a character, going from being hopeless to, having a purpose again once he can, walk and move his limbs and shit. That stuff's all really good, and it all pays off really neatly and nicely. I just think it could be a little stronger working its way up to that, but overall not a huge deal.
No, I can dig it.
I like the way they kind of set up the idea of technology doing things that humans can't, and there being an innate thing, that only humans can truly do and understand.
Agency.
Yeah, agency.
Right.
There's a strong theme of agency throughout the film.
He mentions it directly at the beginning when STEM is first introduced. They really play that stuff up in a lot of ways.
That's the theme of the film.
But I think they ultimately go against that at the very end. Because I think by the end of the movie, it's very clear that technology can do everything that people can do. I think that's kind of the point of the ending of the movie, is not a happy ending,
Well, I think this film's message, I'm not saying whether I agree with it or not, but I think this film's message is that it can do everything other than be a human, and because the STEM itself is a sociopath.
Yeah, it can do everything except morality.
Yeah, except be good.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, maybe that's it. But otherwise, it can do everything.
Yeah.
Ultimately, the good morality of man does not triumph in this movie.
No,
not
at all.
Yeah, that's the thing. They set up computers and technology as something that does not have morals at all.
Right.
It's purely pragmatic, and it's kind of shows the danger of that, which I really like in science fiction, because half the time when you get movies about technology and robots and stuff, they're fairly good, passive characters.
Right. Something like Her.
Yeah, you get Her, where even when they kind of transcend, they're not antagonistic.
Right.
And they have a strong sense of morality. And you could argue that that's more realistic since people are making technology, but...
Right, but also, how do you begin to teach empathy to a machine?
Exactly.
That
Two
is...
sides of the coin.
Exactly. It's I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's very hard when the way you're building a consciousness is a stream of letters and numbers. When it's code, how do you code empathy? How do you code morality? So I in that sense, I think that films like Upgrade are potentially more realistic, because it's if you did make a super smart AI, odds are it would probably turn out like this one, like this sociopathic murder monster.
Yeah, well, and it almost had
purely
kind of
self-serving,
a Black Mirror type of thing, where it's about, in a way, the unintended consequences of technology.
Right. Well, or even when you look at something like Ex Machina, where by the end of that, the AI copies empathy in order to manipulate Domhnall Gleeson, but does not truly possess empathy. She pretends to care about him in order to get him to help her escape, but then she ultimately leaves him behind because she doesn't care, because she's still a machine. I think that kind of stuff is poignant in a sense. It's maybe a little bit nihilistic and cynical, but I think it's important to consider in the age of technology that we're in, the ways that creating AI could be very, very bad.
Well, that's the funny thing, because in a lot of ways, I saw a lot of comparisons when watching this to RoboCop.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
In structure, in kind of themes, but I think RoboCop is much less nihilistic than this movie.
Well, yeah, because RoboCop is literally Robot Jesus.
Well, yeah, exactly.
So, he is a savior, so it is indeed much, much less nihilistic. But also, RoboCop is he's rebuilt from a human. He's not totally built from scratch. That's what makes him better than the
Ed 209.
209 because that's completely artificial and lacks the human component that RoboCop has.
Which is funny because in this film, we had the Ned Flanders villain, who I like to call Ned 209.
Ned 209.
Actually held similar principles. While he was still made of human, he believed that he had ascended and that he was superior because of his because he had given in many ways.
He had
that allows him to
become
be parallel to Ed 209.
He became one of the upgraded.
Yeah.
He even tells our protagonist, like, I didn't kill your wife. I didn't paralyze you. I gave you a way into my race.
Can we talk about him for a minute?
Absolutely.
Because he, in one scene at the bar, he kills a man by sneezing.
By sneezing nanobots into his face. That was awesome. It was the most extra dumbest shit, but it was amazing. It was the fakest sneeze too. It was just like achoo, and then we got like the zoom in on all of like the little microscopic robots with their little blade tentacles, and they go up the dude's nose. That was the most extra thing about this movie.
It was very funny though, and we should also mention that pretty much all of the bad guys have augmented guns within their arms, just implanted in their arms.
I know you're setting me up right now, Ben, and I know you're setting me up because I said it during the movie, and I'm gonna say it. I'm gonna say it anyway. I know.
All right,
okay.
Say it. No, say it. Put it on record.
All right. Well, all right. So I will prime by Tease's response to what I said first, because I know
No, you. But say what you said first. Say what you said first.
Well, I mean, okay, but like, if you have a gun in your arm, then where's the rest of the muscle? Was my bit, because you need those to make your arm be an arm. That was all.
I mean,
and that's what he was worried about. I mean, in this movie, that's what was.
I'm not worried about it.
That's
what
was
the point to bring up.
But
that's what was too unbelievable for him.
I mean, again, wouldn't the muscles be around the gun?
Well, yeah, then you'd have a bigger arm. But they had normal-sized human arms.
What if they replaced?
What if they replaced the?
What if they replaced one of the bones with a gun?
You have two bones in your forearm.
That's what I'm saying. What if they replaced one of them with the gun barrel? Because the opening was in the palm here.
And then like your muscles just kind of attached to the barrel.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
I mean, there's literally a hole. There's literally a hole in the bicep where they put bullets into their arm. Another question is,
I wish I could see the look on Tease's face.
Another question is, if they put the bullets into their upper arm and the barrel is down here, how do they bend their arm? Where do those bullets go? That's another question.
Well, Tease, it's the same way that the warp drive works on the Star Trek machine. It all works the same way.
How does Ned 209 sneeze nanobots?
Like
how does not Tom Hardy attach a little chip to his spinal column and it can control every part of his body?
Okay, they never show it, but I just assume that every time they need to reload their arm guns, they just like flex
the bicep,
flex a bunch of times. Yeah.
I was really hoping that one of them would do the Roman Reigns and cock the fist before they fire.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I have like images in my sketchbooks of like finger guns and that kind of shit. Like, I love it. I just think it's a fun question to ask. I wouldn't have it any other way. I'm very glad it's in the movie, and it's not an actual critique.
It's very cool. I just thought it was funny that like how all the other crazy like unbelievable sci-fi shit that had
noting, and I could talk about the nanobots in the nose too, and critique that if you want.
It's just that like no, it's fine. I just thought it was funny that was the one thing that you chose to like fixate on that like didn't make sense to you out of all of the other.
I would have just liked to see them have a
funny.
beefier gun arm and a normal-sized regular arm.
Oh, that would be cool. So it looks like they jerk off really like with one arm really vigorously.
Yeah, they really work their gun a lot.
Just have like one big gun arm and another small arm.
Like a Trogdor situation.
That's what I always do when I create my wrestling characters in 2K is I always give them one really big beefy arm and one really small weak arm.
Oh, yeah, like a T-Rex arm on one side.
Exactly. Yeah. No.
That's what I wanted.
It makes the big beefy arm more intimidating when the other arm looks.
Exactly. It makes your gun arm scarier if it's bigger.
Yeah.
That is true.
You got more gun in your arm.
That's very true.
Yeah.
It checks out. I mean,
also like when they fired that gun, like the inside of the barrel in their arm would be like so hot. It would be so hot.
Oh, your arm would just melt off.
It for sure would. Like
it's like a 12 gauge.
Arm guns are just not feasible, but in
they
Upgrade,
look cool.
Hey, but future shit arm guns.
That future shit arm guns, that's what it means to be truly upgraded. To be able to fire a bullet out of your arm without your arm melting.
Yeah.
One of my favorite fight sequences in this movie is between Ned 209 and
not Tom Hardy.
Tom Hardy.
Not Tom Hardy.
Discount Tom Hardy.
No. Tom Hardley.
Oh, excellent.
Okay, yes.
That's it. Nope, that's the one. That's the one.
That is the one. Tom Hardley. When they're fighting, they're both doing the most stiff robotic fight I've ever seen.
Oh yeah, it's awesome. Well, I also love how like once he's implanted with STEM, Tom Hardley like moves slightly artificially as well. Like it's not super apparent, but it's like all of his movements have like a kind of stiff precision to them. Like he always keeps his back really straight because it's like a robot in charge of all that stuff. So I agree. I loved that their fight scene was also like super stiff. It reminded me a lot of like the gun kata stuff in Equilibrium.
Very blocky.
The very blocky, like knowing where your opponent exactly where your opponent's strikes are going to land so you can perfectly move into those immediate blocking positions. It looks corny as fuck, but it's awesome. I love it.
Yeah, it works because I love
Equilibrium too. I think Equilibrium's a better movie than The Matrix, and I'll stand by that.
I can stand by that. I still don't know if it's a good movie.
It's fucking stupid, but it's great.
But,
I love Equilibrium. It's dumb as shit.
Yeah.
It's very corny in this movie, but it works because of that wry sense of humor and the movie in general.
And the camera movement.
Yeah, the camera movement helps as well.
And also just like that the setting of the room they're in with the green and purple neons like shining from outside the window. Yeah, that whole scene was awesome. I did also love how Ned 209 tried to sneeze on him at one point, and STEM was just like, "Nanobots incoming, do something."
And he goes,
so no, Tom Hardley headbutts him. As he's inhaling to sneeze, Tom Hardley just headbutts him because their heads are both like on the table right next to each other.
Yeah, that's
Loved that. I was hoping they would do something like that because I'm like, they set up the sneezing nanobots, and if they had not addressed that at all for the rest of the movie and he'd never tried to use it again, I would be like, what the fuck was the point of that? Awesome. Awesome. God. Well, should we get into the bait and switch twist and then the real twist at the end?
One thing I want to talk about before we get into that, because I do have a lot to say about that.
Yeah, same.
But I want to highlight the score.
Oh, fuck
movie.
yeah.
Actually, yeah.
I looked up the guy who did it. I think his name's fuck.
It's a good name.
Yeah, no, that's a great name. Jed something.
Jed
Palmer. I looked him up. Have never seen a single other thing he's done. He's been a sound editor and a sound designer on a lot of films. Still nothing I've seen before, but I was blown away by the score.
That's the thing. It's very minimal synth for a lot of it, and it's very mechanical sounds.
It's
industrial.
It's dark too. Like it wouldn't have felt out of place in like Deus Ex or something, that kind of like dark sci-fi universe. Like it was very fitting, I think. Grim sounding. And like you said, industrial, ambient, fucking awesome.
It was super well done. I was really impressed by it. But yeah, let's get into the end.
Yeah.
Because the end is, in my opinion, when this movie really goes full on horror.
I agree. And I will also admit that the movie successfully bait and switched me to the point that made me feel like a fool a little bit, because it's first revealed that the guys who killed his wife and incapacitated him were working for somebody who paid them, and surprise, it's the young billionaire guy who implanted him with STEM, like was telegraphed the entire movie. So I was like, oh yeah, like big surprise, big twist there, guys. You really got us with that one. Very self-congratulatory. And then they fucking bait and switched it again, and it turns out that STEM was the evil mastermind all along.
STEM was the jigsaw of
STEM was the
Upgrade.
jigsaw of Upgrade. STEM was controlling the little billionaire kid, and wanted a pure, unaugmented human form. That is the next step in his evolution. He had achieved everything he could as an AI, so now he needed to be human. So he set up this situation for him to be implanted in Tom Hardy. He missed out on the real Tom Hardy, so he had to settle for Tom Hardy.
He was already venomed.
He was already venomed, yeah.
Yeah, I think they had a couple of key moments that helped set up the fact that it was STEM. One that I caught on to where it had me kind of wondering about that was during the chase sequence where Tom Hardy is speeding away from the detective and STEM takes control of another autocrat's vehicle.
Right.
And that's where I kind of keyed into that. I was like, oh, if STEM is capable of that, like from the beginning, then he's involved in the process. Like if he's capable of what also got Tom Hardy at the beginning, it's like,
right, when their car
then yeah,
malfunctioned.
That one
crashed.
fooled me because when I saw that, I thought he's doing the same thing the people that did that to him and his wife did, and it was kind of his transformation into a villain.
You saw it as a plot development.
Yeah.
Well, I would agree with that, but also like Tom Hardy's character didn't have any say over that, and we already at that point it was well established that STEM was a sociopath.
I guess the reason that part didn't get me was because I just always assumed from the beginning that the tech billionaire was the one behind the whole thing.
Yeah.
So I assumed that he had just hacked into Tom Hardy and his wife's car at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
So, and he established, like, when he introduces STEM, that, like, oh, STEM can talk to anything that, you know, has a signal. So that's why when it did that, I was like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. You know, it's an AI. It can get into other systems.
And yeah, following along that same thought, like, if the young billionaire character, if he could hack that car, you know, he would do it through the same technology he used to build STEM.
Right.
So either one is still believable at that point in the film. It's true.
Well, I guess what I'll say is that I didn't give this movie the credit of being smart enough to not just have the billionaire be the villain the whole time.
Yeah, this movie...
Because it seemed like the most obvious thing to do, and this movie is so kind of like lighthearted and schlocky in some of its action that I guess I just didn't really think that it was like a more intelligent story. But then by the end, I think it does reveal that it is. And that's when I'll agree with Ben that that's when it really starts getting into the horror stuff, when STEM is basically just like, you deleted my guard protocols. I don't have to have your permission to take hold of your body anymore. Like, I'm doing what I'm doing for my own self-preservation. And he's a prisoner in his own body as his body is killing people ruthlessly. I think that's when it gets into true horror territory. 100%.
That loss of agency and autonomy really emphasizes the horror.
And the fact that he's like experiencing his body doing these things too, like he's feeling everything, he's just not in control of it. It's like being possessed, you know. So in that way, yeah, I think I think there definitely is a horror film here. It's not purely horror. It's very much action, sci-fi,
Touch of dark comedy.
touch of dark comedy, and also like when it gets to the very end and we see that that the tech billionaire was just a pawn of Stem's the entire time, and now Stem is coming to kill him because he's the only one who could create another Stem.
We should talk about that reveal, by the way, because I think it bait and switched us really well, but
It does open up a pretty.
It did get a little sloppy.
It opens up a significant plot hole in the movie.
First off, can we talk about how Stem was controlling the billionaire at all?
I don't think it was physically controlling him, not his body, but he says, like, I haven't been in charge of my company for a long time. I've been working for somebody much higher than me, Stem. So, like, even though he
was it an ideological thing?
Yes.
I think that Stem literally infiltrated his company, started pulling the strings, and at that point, he could basically blackmail the dude into doing anything he wanted
to. I think he did also see it as like an ideological thing. Like he was of that same camp of seeing Stem as like a higher being.
For a while, to an extent, until he then wants to kill Stem in an act of his own self-preservation. Like, he doesn't let himself be killed. Like, he tries to fight it. So I don't think it's purely ideological. I think it's probably a combination of both. I think he was creating something that he truly considered a higher being, but once it started taking over his life and blackmailing him, then it became less ideological and more survival.
I just saw it as it wasn't blackmailing him, but it was convincing him to say these things.
I mean, that's also possible.
But
the film doesn't show us.
But when the things do happen, he does have the autonomy to, try to stop it. And he does try to stop Stem.
I mean, I suppose so, kind of. But, also at the same time, like, when Stem is in control of everything that he has control of as well, like, what can he really do? So I think that for the most part, he was freely doing Stem's bidding because he knew the alternative was ruin for him. Or death.
Maybe. I just think there's a huge magnitude of difference between being controlled like our main character was and being controlled like the billionaire was,
I mean, no, there definitely is a difference, but they were both being controlled. I think the main difference is that our main character had a sense of morals to try to fight the control, but was unable to because it was literally hardwired into his body, whereas the tech billionaire was not strong enough to really fight back using the things he had to his advantage. I don't know. They don't really explore too deeply into that. It's kind of a last minute reveal.
Well, I mean, you could assume that he was doing it to try to ascend, I guess, because the Ned 209 character talks about ascending or whatnot.
The billionaire did have an implant. Did have a Stem implant.
He didn't have a Stem implant.
Because it's established that there's only the one Stem implant.
He had eye augmentations.
Yeah, he had some...
Did he have just like an actual earpiece?
Yeah, he had an earpiece in his head.
Yeah. Okay, that's what it was. Sorry, because I remember like he did have Stem speak to him, but it's just
right. But no, it was through the earpiece. Okay. But it's made clear that there's only the one Stem because that's why Stem wants to kill the billionaire, because he doesn't want him to create others like him. He wants to be the only one.
Even though Ned 209 was kind of like him.
He was heavily augmented, but I think he was still fully in control of everything his body was doing. I don't think there was an AI controlling him at all.
No, he had definitely
he was
Stem, didn't he?
No, he didn't have a Stem. There was only one stem. I guess that's true. He was just very augmented.
He was just really heavily augmented and had military training and was enhanced by computers. So, but he wasn't being controlled by an AI. But I guess the plot hole that I wanted to mention, that something that I didn't even realize until well after we watched the movie, was that if Stem was in control the entire time, at one point he has Tom Hardy go to this hacker character to disable the guard commands, or the guard, or command guards, whatever, the command guards that were on him that enabled him to control Tom Hardy's body autonomously without permission. And if he was the mastermind of the whole thing and set up the whole thing, then he would absolutely have not had the billionaire install guard commands on there, or command guards or whatever. The reveal that he's the mastermind the whole time, I think, renders the entire hacker subplot completely irrelevant to the story, but still a fun enough segment in and of itself that I don't really have a problem with it.
Yeah,
no, I'm inclined to agree.
I'm still not 100% sure how much of a plot hole it is, because it could be one of those things where he made it with guards before Stem got that level of consciousness to the point where he's blackmailing.
Well, right, but Stem was obviously aware the entire time that the command guards were there. So he would have, if he were blackmailing the guy before he put him in Tom Hardy's body, he certainly would have made him remove those command guards.
But yet again, was he blackmailing, or was he just telling him to do this to get a body? Because it's like, but then it's more of a complicit thing than a blackmail thing.
But I mean, what's in that for the tech billionaire? Why would he do that of his own free will? He's not
ideologically.
He's not gaining anything from that.
I mean, it's an ideological thing that he
it's established that
implanted in anyone's body to begin with.
It's established that Stem existed before he created the actual chip to implant in somebody's body.
Yeah.
He did that on Stem's orders because Stem wanted to have a human form. So Stem existed and was in charge of this guy before this point. So all I'm saying is that I don't think Stem would have allowed itself to be implanted in a body with those kind of command guards. I think the only reason that is in the movie is to make you think that Stem is not the villain, that he's doing that to try to help Tom Hardy out, so he can get revenge on his wife's killers.
Yeah, I just thought more of a Stem was telling him what to do without forcing his hand, much like early in the movie Stem was telling Tom Hardy what to do before he took control.
I mean, I suppose that's true. And also possible. I don't know. I have a hard time believing that like a perfect artificial intelligence would enact a plan like this with such safeguards in place. I just have a hard time believing that in the context of like what the AI is supposed to be by the end of it, this sort of all-powerful like computer deity. I just don't think that makes a lot of sense. But, you know, like I said, it's something that I didn't even think about until the movie was over, so it obviously didn't hamper my enjoyment of the film. I just think that it is a plot hole. You can do with that what you want, I guess. If you're the kind of person who really, really hates plot holes, then...
I think more than anything, it's just that last reveal is a little sloppily executed.
Yeah.
So it raises more questions.
I mean, yeah, for
answers.
sure. That's also a part of it. Like whether
maybe they'll get to it in the sequel.
You think we'll get an upgrade sequel?
I don't know. I really don't.
I hope not, honestly.
Yeah, I hope not. I can't imagine what they would do.
I doubt it would be good, but I'm still open to it.
I believe
the way it could be, but it probably wouldn't be.
I like the way this movie ends, in that it definitely does not have any sort of happy ending.
No.
Where Tom Hardy tries to keep Stem from killing the detective, and he fights Stem so hard that his mind breaks, and Stem just like puts what remains of his mind in like in an artificially created world where his wife is still alive.
Well, the way they do that is really well done because it's yet another fake out. In that he is fighting Stem the whole time, and he brings himself to pull the gun basically to his head.
It puts it to his neck where the Stem implant is.
And you hear like almost a gunshot sound, and then he wakes up in the hospital.
Right.
And he can move, and his wife is there. I was worried for a split second.
I was terrified it was going to be a dream sequence.
That it is just a dream
The whole
sequence.
thing was just a dream. I was terrified of that. I would have been really pissed off.
I think they set it up really nicely as well, because you get those earlier sequences where Tom Hardy is just struggling to stay awake. Finally, Stem lets him sleep, and during that dream sequence, and during that dreaming, he sees his wife, and he wakes up again. He says, "Well, that felt very real." And also there's the dialogue during the hacker sequence where you see the people in the background in VR, and I love this little note, and that's that Tom Hardy makes a mention to the hacker character, like sort of asking what those people are doing, and he mentions that, oh, well, just doing VR all the time sounds god awful, and it's really unfortunate because that's what ends up happening to his character. He's just trapped in VR.
Well,
but in many ways, it's still better than the world that's outside.
Well, and that's exactly what the hacker says. The hacker says because sometimes the real world is worse, and that is literally what happens to him. Like, Stem tucks him away into VR, into basically the Matrix. He's put into the Matrix at the end, and Stem has complete control of his body, shoots the police detective, has already killed the tech billionaire, walks out, and now is free amongst the rest of us.
You know, that's funny. That actually kind of validates like a huge plot hole I've always seen in the Matrix, which is humans would make terrible batteries.
Well, they would. Yeah, that's just scientific fact.
Yeah, but
we don't put out much electricity at all.
But it does kind of validate the concept of the Matrix, though, like being tucked away and just letting a robot utilize your body.
Right.
You know, but not not as a battery, but as like
smarter than the Matrix. Yeah.
In every way, yes.
It's the same kind of concept. The ending is like this weird mashup of like the Matrix and Ex Machina, because it ends just like Ex Machina with the AI being
maybe it's
being
in the same
free.
world. Maybe they get together.
Oh, are you shipping?
Yes. Oh my God.
I'm shipping Ava and Stem.
I am shipping Ava and Stem. You heard it here first. Stava is the new celebrity couple. I am hashtag Team Stava.
Our new dystopian AI overlords. Stava.
But they're so cute. Oh man, I would let them just.
Alicia Vikander and Tom Hardy.
Yes.
Just asking for some DeviantArt fan.
I'll go make it. I'm on it, boys.
All right.
Good.
Well, is it time to rate, guys?
I think so. You can start.
Okay. Overall, I was very, very pleasantly surprised with this movie. I expected to have a fun time. I did not expect how really well executed this premise was, and how well the world is built, and the acting is solid across the board. Cinematography is masterful. The score is great. Yeah, my only minor gripes are, the little bit of clumsiness at the beginning, and maybe that plot hole, but like doesn't really hamper my enjoyment of the film at all. I'm gonna give it a strong 4 out of 5 pods. Liked this movie a lot. Kleedman?
Yeah, I agree with all those things. I was saying to myself earlier, like, if I saw that plot hole, like if I was like producing or in like a higher position of this film, and I saw that plot hole, I wouldn't have minded or been bothered by it, and would just like kept green lighting. So I have no qualms with anything. I felt this movie could be looked at as having done wrong. And hell yeah, those fight sequences are fucking rad. Just loved it. Loved everything. The dialogue. Apart from like some fumbles at the beginning, like the dialogue lands well the majority of the time in this film. It kept catching me off guard, and I was giggling a lot film got a lot of great reactions out of me. A lot of the kill sequences too, like at the end of fight
Some
scenes.
really gory stuff. We didn't
Very
talk about
visceral.
that.
Yeah, loved it. A lot of live effects with that too. Very like Saw inspired.
Yeah.
Like death kill sequences. Which is always great. I tend to enjoy action sequences with a real visceral payoff. Because I was raised on Mortal Kombat. And those were some really good finishes.
Fatality.
Yeah. So no, I'm gonna say like fucking hell, yeah, like 4. We'll do 4. You'll do 0.5.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it's not like a Casablanca to me or anything like that, but like it's fucking great, and I'll be watching it again for sure.
Yeah, same.
It's a great movie.
Yeah, well, not to repeat you guys too much, I think besides, the little bit of exposition dumpiness at the very beginning and kind of a little bit of sloppiness with the reveal at the end, this movie basically perfectly executed what it set out to do. And that is make a, very wryly, dark action, comedy, horror movie that works in all 3 of those categories really well in their own ways. This movie had some of the coolest action sequences I've seen all year. Really inventive camera work and style. And the choreography, while corny, worked because it was corny a lot of times because the robotic stuff and whatnot. The comedy worked because it's just so dark and out there and, situationally funny. And the horror really works in that last sequence where he's losing his autonomy, which I thought was fantastic. The music is great. The sets are great. I thought the acting was really good. Georgina from Get Out does a great job.
Detective. She's made an appearance
detective.
in a lot of the movies we've talked about this year.
Yeah,
I don't know if you've noticed that. She's in Get Out. She's in The Purge election year. She's in Unfriended, Dark Web, and now this.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything I'm missing? She may be our most watched actor of the year so far.
Yeah, no, but she did a great job as well.
She's a pretty small part, though.
I think this movie, besides those few minor qualms, is nearly perfect. So I'm going to give it a 4.5 out of 5 as well.
Well, that will give Upgrade a strong 4.3 out of 5 pods overall. Check it out. That's a recommendation, and you can put that in your pocket.
One thing I did want to note is also a comparative to Altered Carbon, which I think also came out this year.
Yeah, I watched the first 2 or 3 episodes of that.
I think this film captured a lot of elements that I wanted to see better told in Altered Carbon. I'm probably going to piss a lot of people off on that. I know Altered Carbon was pretty well received, but I had some qualms with it, to be sure. Of course, I love Poe. Everyone loves Poe. But anyway, I digress. But where Altered Carbon kind of struggled to show the existential crisis of having your body out of place, this film succeeded.
Yeah, I agree. I see a lot of the same ideas there. I only saw the first 3 episodes of Altered Carbon and didn't really go on from there. I liked the aesthetic more than anything else. I can't say that I was terribly captured by the story.
Yeah, but even then, the aesthetic is so haphazard in Altered Carbon.
In a lot of ways
all
it is.
Over
Yeah,
the place.
it is all over the place.
It just doesn't know what it wants to be, I think. It tries to be Blade Runner, but it by no means is anywhere near as aesthetically on point.
Right.
Whereas the Upgrade, it has those elements, but it keeps to its own very well. It's always very gritty, and it stays Upgrade.
It feels like a more believable future than Altered Carbon.
Yeah,
as well.
or even Blade Runner.
Or even Blade Runner.
Altered. I mean, compared to Altered Carbon, Altered Carbon is much more artificial. It's much more grandiose than even Blade Runner. Blade Runner's fairly gritty and believable. So yeah, I did want to bring up that comparison. But that's all I had on it.
Definitely one of the best cyberpunk movies I've ever seen. Upgrade. I gotta say,
no, it's a great one.
You don't see too many cyberpunk movies besides Blade Runner and whatnot, but I think this movie does it really well.
Yeah, and it's in my favorite genre, so I was looking to be pretty critical of this. I mean, Blade Runner, both the original and 2049 are 2 of my favorite films, and I was not expecting any kind of quality to the same degree out of this film, and I wouldn't put it on the same.
I certainly
level,
was.
but...
I certainly was not expecting such a smart film from Lee Wannell. I'm definitely gonna have to keep a closer eye on him in the future, especially anything he does outside of the Insidious / Conjuring verse. I don't know if y'all noticed the little Easter egg when he was going into the apartment building and he was looking at all like the names next to the doorbells in the lobby. There was one that was J1.
Oh, I did not.
See what he did there. But yeah, overall, I think that's a resounding recommendation from all of us. And Cleveland, I believe you had a word from our sponsor this week.
Yep. Sure did. Oh boy, yeah. I had such a good word from our sponsor, and they really sat me down and made sure that I was prepared for the speech. They really did. They made sure that
they gave
I knew.
You a good copy.
They told you to stick to the script this time. God damn it.
Yep, that was the words they said, and I sure am. Oh boy. Cause this week was brought to you by STEM, actually, the robot. Good job.
That STEM?
Nope, no, a different one actually. It's an artificial intelligence designed to make plants.
Oh.
It's a pun. It's a less malicious company. Sure.
What was the catchphrase again? I forgot.
STEM stands for sometimes even meat. Because the plants grow beef. They're beef.
Beef plants.
Beef plants.
Brought to you by beef plants. There you go. Artificial intelligence that grow beef plants. That's who's sponsoring us this week.
This week, the Pod People brought to you by beef plants. Thanks, STEM.
STEM. Sometimes. What was it?
Sometimes even meat.
Sometimes. What was the T?
I think you turned it into sometimes.
Times. Oh, even meats. Even meats. Yeah. Yeah. Of course. Thank you for reminding me, guys. Yeah. Sometimes even meats.
All right.
I'm so sorry.
I thought it was good.
Well, I don't have a Metacritic corner this week, but I heard that while I was gone, y'all instituted a new sometimes segment with Rotten Tomato territory.
That's right. You're in Rotten Tomato territory.
I'm still gonna use the same Metacritic corner music sting. Cue.
You freaking pricks! When will you learn? When will you learn that your actions have consequences?
What time is it? Metacritic Corner. What time is it?
Metacritic corner. In addition to the one that Ben also made for me to put in.
Nice.
So yeah, I couldn't find a single bad review on Metacritic for Upgrade. So I had to delve into Rotten Tomatoes instead. And I found this one from user Joey Z. This was a seldom movie. It does play into the futuristic fact humans are getting cyber enhancements, but putting him into the gameplay has been a bit of a letdown. STEM only took murder fights 3 times in a 2-hour movie. The only scene that I would recommend changing is the end scene, which made 0 sense. 2 out of 5 stars.
The gameplay?
What does any of it mean?
Wait, what was their name again?
Joey Z.
Yeah, just from the beginning. This was a seldom movie. What does that mean? It does play into the futuristic fact humans are getting cyber enhancements, but putting him into the gameplay has been a bit of a letdown. What does that mean?
Gameplay?
I don't see what he's talking about.
Gameplay?
STEM only took murder fights 3 times in a 2-hour movie. He only took murder fights 3 times, guys. What does that mean?
I don't know. He needs to take more.
He needs to take more murder fights. Yet, for how
I
much
think everyone should take more murder fights.
for how much
yeah.
this person disliked this review or for this movie, the only scene that they would recommend changing is the end one, which made 0 sense. So
2 out
like
of 5.
2 out of 5, yeah. So yeah, this has been Rotten Tomato territory.
I do like that. The only scene he had a problem with is the last one, but he also had a problem that there weren't enough fight sequences throughout the film.
Stem didn't take enough murder fights.
Yeah, thank you for reminding me of his eloquent words. Yeah, that doesn't work because if you want more sequences, then you need to have to lose.
But the gameplay.
The gameplay was very
Putting
good.
like the cyber enhancements were okay, but putting him in the gameplay was definitely a letdown.
Yeah, they should not have put him in the game.
They shouldn't have put him in the gameplay that way, unless they were gonna better reveal how humans are getting cybernetic enhancements.
Yeah, which I think is through taking murder fights.
It's got to be through taking murder fights. But honestly, the only scene that I really would recommend changing was the end one because it made 0 sense.
Oh, yeah.
It's a seldom film. What can I say?
No, for sure. Hashtag Joey Z. Hashtag always more murder fights.
Always more murder fights. Always
take more murder fights.
Take more
Sorry,
murder
sorry.
fights. Yeah, take more murder
Hashtag
fights.
take more murder fights.
And this is the end of Rotten Tomato territory for real this time.
This is the end.
When will you learn that your actions have consequences?
Well, that'll bring us to the end of this week's episode on Upgrade.
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 Monday.
Upgrade.
With Jimmy Flip Flop and the beef.
I'm the beef, and I'm here to say I need salt. Yeah. If you like the show,
If you like the beef.
if you like the show, take a few seconds to give us a good rating and review on Apple Podcasts, or a bad one, honestly. I think that's what we really deserve. I'm just kidding. Please don't do that.
Yeah,
You can, Apple Podcasts, wherever else you get your podcast, 5-star rating, review, all that good shit. Follow us on Twitter at PodPeoplePod. Check out the Letterboxd page, letterboxd.com/podpeoplepod. All the movies we talk about, all the ratings we give, all the links to the reviews, everything is there.
and sometimes even meats.
And sometimes meats and cheeses. You can follow me on Twitter at Mr. Van Awesome.
And I'm at Mr. Sheets. Come bully me on Twitter.
Sometimes you can find me tweeting for at Lightarc Studios, and you can always find me on my art station at either Cleveland Mosier or Iron Prism.
Iron Prism.
Meaty.
Wow. Well, next week we'll be back with something. It's getting to that time of year where we're playing it real fast and loose, guys. So you'll be
Firing from the hip.
We'll be just as surprised as you are. Firing from the hip. Surprise movies. Lack of planning.
Planning.
Irresponsible podcast hosts. Gross noises. I can hear our followers dropping out as we speak.
So maybe we should stop
Losing likes by the second. Second. Skirt. This has been the Pod People. You know what it is.
Yeah.